Ain't no introduction needed. Hey, how are you? If anybody can hear me on the internet, my name's Kenny Glick. And if you have been trading with us since this morning at around 7:15, today would be the day where you would say to yourself, man, I thought this guy was nuts. But shit, every trade he talks about actually works out. So maybe I should be nuts with him. And that's that's going to be in my epitaph because today is one of those days where it's hard to believe what we've done. It's hard to believe what we do every day. But when you stay focused, my friends, and hopefully you guys can hear me over there on the interweb. Hang on a second. If you guys could hear me, and I don't mind, I don't want to bring you down, right, and get all melancholy and depressing, right? But your hero here has a knack for getting out of stocks and having them go more in the direction that I was in. Not not just occasionally. Every trade. Every trade I've done in my entire life. And I'm talking about way back even from 1992 when I placed my first trade on IGT. I sold some and it kept going up. And 30 years later, more than 30 years now, it still continues to happen with a regularity that is beyond spiritual, beyond believing that we live in a simulated reality. And let me just go off on the side of the road here and talk about the New York football Jets for a second, because the analogy is amazing. There's something spiritual about how awful the Jets are. And by the way, I'm short the Qs right now. I don't want to really talk about it, but I'm short the Qs right now. All right. Because we got a 1 minute multi-day VWAP reversal. The only reason is short the Qs. I'm short the Qs right now. I'm trying to milk this trade. You see that orange line on the screen? That's my stop. You see the red line? That's the anomaly trade. So this morning, the Qs had this weird print down there. And what we've noticed, I'll get back to the Jets conversation in a second. What we've noticed is that because the market is rigged and we're in a simulated reality, that every once in a while, the matrix that is the market, a computer program that is already programmed in what the stocks want to do that day, if not today, the next week, and the week after, and the week after. And every once in a while, intraday, the market slips and tells you, hey, we're going to make it go down to this price. And you have to factor that in. And here we go. Look how it's going right to the price. Bang, covered. Now you cover a little bit right there because you have to. That's the law. Cover some here. Stop remains at 68.07. Okay. So far, so good. But here's the bizarro thing. This happened, and the market kept going up, but we kept it in mind. We kept it in mind. We said to ourselves, hey, if the market gives us an inkling or a notion or an idea, or what we like to say, confirmation that we could go down to the anomaly print. We believe it because we keep seeing it happen, but we're not going to take the trade until we see a VWAP break. And you see right there where it sold off. I got short. I quickly stopped out, but then it didn't break over the VWAP. And I said, wait a second, maybe I am onto something. I'm not going to short it until it confirms and breaks the prior day VWAP. So there's a saying in this business, I'd rather be late and right than early and wrong. So right now we're really, really, really right because I'm short about 1 million shares right now. I'm keeping it casual because I'm not going to get excited about being short the market. Again, I'm glad it's working, But right now, you know what I'm doing? Cover some right here. Because when stocks get to where things happened once before, you have to do things. So that's another one of our targets. Now cover a little bit more right here. And now you raise your stop to the anomaly print. Because our next target is way down here. We should get there now. And if we break that price, my friends, this is an unprecedented moment in the history of trading. The market is actually going down. So what I want you to do right now is stay short the Qs for the first time pretty much since April. And I believe that this sell-off being confirmed slightly by the UVXY, we need UVXY to go up a little bit. But now we've covered 50% of the position already. And I'm glad you're joining in. So what we do now is we understand that shorting is short-lived and you're going to die. But we're having a blow-off top moment. The only time in trading in 2025 where you're now allowed to stay short. But you always have to go through the steps, my friends. If you're shorting the market right now, and I hope to God you are, especially the RGTI with a massive blow-off top across the entire spectrum of quantum, all the momentum stocks simultaneously just went red. What's that telling you? That the sell-off's a little bit more significant than the little tiny pullbacks that we've had. But then you also remind yourself that shorting is short-lived and you're going to die. Because UVXY, right? If this was a sell-off that was going to last, wouldn't you think UVXY would be rallying a little bit more? So right now you just have to think of this as a mild pullback. Profitable pullback, yes. So what we do is we look at extended periods of VWAP. And you'll notice that's the 2-day VWAP. And we just got there and we covered some. So now we look at 3 days worth. And we're through. And now we look at 4 days. Ooh. And you know what that is? That's our next target. So what we do now is we put a bid in at 604.83. But knowing that shorting is short-lived, we understand that, yeah, sure, we can get to 604.83, but we lower our stop to the 606.11, and we let the algorithms do their work. So if you want to entertain the idea that the market could actually pull back, and again, this is just a mild pullback. This isn't a sell-off. Don't call it a sell-off. $605 stock going down 2 points. You want to call that a sell-off? That's nothing. So we have to, sorry, I can't do that voice too much longer. So we have to hold, you see. And I got in late. Because as my mentor said, well, he didn't say this. I made this one up. I'd rather be late and right than early and wrong. So the Qs on the short has hit every one of our targets today. So now the question is, will we get more out of it? Usually the answer is no. So how do you stay in a trade where you know deep down in your brain it's going to be a loss? No one should even entertain the idea that the market could stay down, right? No one should entertain the idea that we could actually even go down. But right now it is. So you have to always walk through the steps like you're at an AA meeting. I know this is bad for me. I'm doing it already. I am a victim to my addiction. But right now my addiction is paying me, which is now you have to cover right now. Cover another 100 shares, Fazoon. Boom. We just covered. Now, my friends, you can start to say, we're going to 603.63. But now what do? You're not getting delusional now, right? Just because we're having a mild little pause. You're not thinking the Qs are going to stay down today, are you? You could entertain that idea. You're going to be wrong. Because if you're doing something that only works 2% of the time, you have to factor in that this trade inevitably, not only will be you stopped out, but the Qs will be at 615 by the end of the day. Because every sell-off so far in 2025 has been met with a 5x move back the other way, meaning Now that we've sold off $3, once it turns, we'll go up 15. And that's been the trend of 2025. So sure, it's been fantastic on this short trade and we got paid. Great, right? It's nice. Do not for a second think this is going to amount to anything. Don't think for a second this is the big one. Don't think for a second that this is the top of the market. You're wrong. As you await your fate to be stopped out of the entire position, don't ever for a second think you're ever going to be able to stay short anything. You take your shots when the VWAP gives you permission, and you walk through the steps like you're an addicted crackhead. And you say to yourself, I can't believe this is working. I better cover some right here. Okay, great. Then you lower your stop and you say, oh my God, I can't believe it's breaking down. Well, what if it gets to this next level? I'm going to cover some. Great. And then you say to yourself, could it actually go down some more? Maybe. But then you remind yourself that shorting is short-lived and you're going to die. And what takes the emotion out, my friends? What? Using proper stops, understanding market mechanics, and knowing with certainty that the market is never going to go down in the history for the rest of our lives. You got to start factoring in that the Qs are going to be at 4 digits within the next 2 years. So you want to mess around, you want to play this game as a shorter, hey, it's working right now, right? But don't ever lose focus. And that's what algorithmic trading is all about. Understanding price, volume weighted average price, and pivot points. So right now, the market just gave us permission, right, to stay short. So now you're thinking, hey, are we going to roll over right now? Is this actually going to happen? And then you say to yourself, no, probably won't. So then you see that little candlestick right there, my friends? Happy little candle, right? That's your stop. Because when this next candle pivots and starts to break back above here, the next thing you know, the market will start rallying. And it'll squeeze right back to 607.50, break the VWAP, and probably end at 612 by the end of the day. Because the market never fucking goes down. You get it? Trade's over. Thank you. Thank you for playing. That was our trade for today. I've just covered the rest of it, and I don't give a shit what happens next. So I'm going to go get a cup of coffee. I'll be right back. And I'll tell you about the other trades, and then we'll talk about the reason I believe that we're in a simulated reality. All right, welcome back. So the reason I invite people to see what we do live, Solid and I, it's freaking spiritual. Like the Jets. I'm not a big fan of football any longer because of the New York Football Jets and because of New York sports sucking the absolute life out of me. And I don't need it. I don't need the stress in my life. My dad gave up on watching sports, and now I get it. And again, inevitably, we all become our parents, right? I am my father now. Actually, I wish I was more like my father because he's still long the queues from $38 from 2003. Long story short, or short story long, the Jets prove that the unbelievable can continue to happen, right? So if you watch football, right, and you guys know Trevor Lawrence, number one draft pick from Clemson, went to the worst team in the league. He had a decent move. He had a decent year, and then he got terrible, and they were ready to run this kid right out of town. And the Jaguars were garbage, right? But the cyclical nature of sports, especially the NFL, it's built to give the downtrodden franchises a chance. That's what the draft's all about. And if you're a terrible team over extended periods of time, generally you get better draft picks, and inevitably your team becomes better, except for the New York Football Jets. So I equate the Jets to the QQQ shorters, right? The shorters, like me, we want to believe that rational thought will come along one day. We want to believe that the market could pull back and maybe have a down day every once in a while because that's rational thinking. But rational thought doesn't work any longer in the market because we're in a bull market that everybody wants be involved in. So let's go back to the Jets. The Jets prove, right? Prove it, right? What you think is wrong. And it also proves that trends are the most important thing, right? So if you're a sports gambler, and I said, you probably met me 5 or 6 years ago, some of you, and I said, I gamble on sports, but I don't gamble on sports because I only do a few select things. I do things that I know works. That's betting against the Jets. And it works. And it transcends all space and time. The anomaly is that a team like the Jaguars, who had 4 wins last year, somehow they could figure it out and suddenly be a good team. The Indianapolis Colts, garbage team. Suddenly they get a garbage reject quarterback from the New York Football Giants and he becomes a superstar. The best indication of trend is your eyes. What do you see? And the question is, can you accept it? Right? Can you accept it? And so now I'll correlate this to trading. VWAP is that confirmation that you need that the trend is still intact. So every week when you watch the Jets and you see them play, within minutes you are getting confirmation that they suck. Right? The market, especially using VWAP, confirms the trade that you want to take. And if you fight that trend or bet on the Jets in this case, like some of my moronic friends think that, hey, they can't lose every game. Sure, they can. It's just the same thing. Hey, this market can't go up every day. Sure, it can. Why not? Why do we keep having stocks go from 2 to 500? Because that's the trend. You want to run stocks 10x, 20x, 50x. Well, until it stops, you got to keep assuming that that's going to continue, just like this QQQ short. So if you want to entertain the idea that you're going to be the one, you're going to be the hero, right? To short this market, it's going to be the big one. Don't ever say that. Don't ever lose your discipline. And when you're part of our room, as I navigate you through the markets every day, you will never lose that discipline because I'm here reminding you about the New York Football Jets, about the folly of the shorter, the impossibility of the trade. So you're saying to yourself right now, but Kenny, you just told us you made money on the Q short. Yeah, because it was confirmed and validated. So while you're in that trade, as we just walked you through it live, Use the analogy of a drug addict. Use the analogy of the AA meeting. You know you're doing something wrong, but the market told you it's okay to do it. You know it's not going to last, which is the important part. So as a shorter in a market that never goes down, right, you have to use price. So if you're going to short something, you want it to break today's VWAP and the prior day VWAP. That confirms trend. And what a wonderful confirmation. But then multiple time frame also gives you the targets on the way down. So you have a reason to get in and algorithmic specificity of where to start to cover. Blue line, orange line. And then you check 2 days worth. Ooh. And then you check 3 days. Hey. And then 4. Whoa. And then at the 4 day, you notice, oh, wait a second. I was getting all excited because you thought it might go down to the 5 day, right? But then you remember the rehab analogy. Shorting is short-lived and I'm going to die. Let me walk through the steps. Okay. I know shorting is illegal, but it's working right now, right? So take the money before they take it from you and then manage the trade around the algorithmic levels that mean the most to any trade, and that is VWAP. So right now, what a wonderful trade it was. They can't take the money from us because we already cashed out. And then you place your stops at the pivots. And for me, the trade's over now. I could always get back in, but why would I? I need true new confirmation. And that confirmation is usually this UVXY. You see this UVXY, my friends? It's up a whopping 6 cents. You know what that's telling you? That this little tiny pullback of a $609 index going down 3 points is just that. Insignificant. Absolutely a nothing burger. It was a trade that we were able to isolate our risk reward in our favor. We milked the trade for as best as we could, not being delusional to think that this is going to turn into some sort of correction or crash. And that's how you trade. And with every trade that you ever put on with me, Solid, and being a part of our room, this is the commentary. So let's talk about some other trades. My friends, have you heard me mention that I have a trade that works every time? Now, let me say that one more time. I have a trade that works every single time it shows up. Going on 4 years now, because we started tracking this around the September 4 years ago. And we said, let's start seeing how many times this trade works. So next thing you know, it was 80 in a row. Then it was 250 in a row. We're like, wow, this is pretty amazing. Next thing you know, it's 500 of them in a row. And then we're at 750. At 875, people thought I was just joking around. I was like, all right, so then let's start keeping track. So why don't we start a new count with today? Let me show you the trade that now has worked 1,100 times, 1,104 times in a row over the last 4 years. And the reason I bring this to you, and it's not about the QQQ short, it's about AEHR and STZ. Anybody know why we were trading those two stocks today? Take a wild guess. Because the trade that works every time is on an earnings report that has gapped. And if you are familiar, and I hope you are with VWAP, it's a reversionary tool. Stocks like to come back to the VWAP. Then, if they break the VWAP, that confirms the new trend. So if you have a stock, my friends, that is gapped down on earnings, right? Our default, and let me walk you through this trade, my friends. You ready? Does anybody care what AEHR is? Nah, you don't. Doesn't matter. It works on every trade. I think this is a chip stock. I think it's in the semiconductor industry. Who cares, right? The idea, right? The idea was it reported earnings. So you say to yourself, oh, I'm interested. And that's all you need. There's the premise, right? That's your inkling, your thesis, or your idea. And that idea is that if a stock is gapped down on earnings, you will have one of three things that can happen. You could have the gap and crap, which means it just gaps down and craps itself and goes down some more. You could have the gap and sit, which is the worst trade because it just gaps down and nobody wants to trade it and it just gets ugly. It's just awful. But then you could have the gap faux show bro, Andy Dufresne, Kardashian bottom, VWAP break. And that's the trade that has not failed to provide a winning trade. Mind you, listen to the words that I'm saying. It provides a winning trade. That doesn't mean it's going to be just buy it at 9:30 and sell it at 4. No. You got to work. So you see this AHR, right? And you're saying, man, Kenny, what if I would have bought it at the open? You wouldn't, because it was breaking VWAP. And then it broke pre-market lows. But Kenny, I thought we said we're buying stocks that are gapped down on earnings. We are. After you get the chart pattern known as the faux show bro. So in this trade right here on AEHR, stock I know nothing about, I didn't even like the way it was trading at first, I am required I'm beholden to the rule. Because if you're going to trade, friends, right? If you're going to put money at risk, right? Wouldn't you want to start with a trade that seems to work? Well, sorry. Lately, it's every time. Wouldn't you want to start with a trade that works every single time? And if the answer is no, please get up and go find something to do. The answer, of course, is yes. And if you've been struggling with your trading, how about taking a trade that works every time? If you've been just a break-even trader, how about taking a trade that works every time? And the next part of that statement is, how about you take this trade and only take this trade? And the Q short was nice. But this AEHR trade, this is the trade. And as I carefully try to explain the mechanics behind it and why it works, it not only makes sense, it's a rational trade. And in a market that is completely irrational, it is wonderful. By the way, I hope you guys are in the TMQ right now. Hang on, I got to pivot because I just got into a position. Oh my God. I really wasn't planning to put another trade on, and suddenly I'm in. Why? Because there's a faux show bro VWAP break, and I just bought it right there. You see it? Fake them out, shake them out. VWAP break. Now, again, I hope it follows through right now because I just chased a little bit at 672. And hold on a second. Hang on a second. See, I don't always just see. I was having a nice time. See, I don't want to even trade. By the way, this is why I'm hiring. I just want to have nice, casual conversations, not have to worry about trading. You know what? I'm going to sell it. I don't even want to be in this trade. I'm selling it 678, 79, 80. I'm out. I made $80, whatever. I'm out of it. I just don't want to be in a trade right now. That's why I sold it. I just had it in the corner of my screen. I just pressed the button and I'm out now. All right, let's get back to this conversation. Let's go back to the AHR. I'll show you some other trades that worked. And again, I want you to stay focused on a trade that works every time. And listen, that just worked. I'm glad, right? See that green candle? That's us. Right? Should have bought it a little early. I was not really paying attention. I should have bought it right here. You see the little ass crack break? But when I see a faking out and a shake out and a Kardashian bottom and a little break and then a VWAP break, normally you have some follow through. So I jumped in, and that's trading. So let's go back to AHR. Hold on a second, my friends. You have permission to be excited now. By the way, what I do best, if you don't know, is I sell stocks and then they go up while the market's going down. You see what I did with this TMQ? I only sold it because I just didn't want to be in a trade right now because I got some other things that I got to do today. But let me just walk you through some of these trades. Okay, you ready? All right, hold on a second. Let's take a moment to rejoice. Making money on a short position just makes me all warm and fuzzy. Breathe in the VWAP. And breathe out the fear. Breathe in the VWAP. And breathe out the doubt. One more time. in the VWAP. And breathe out the CNBC. So when I say that we have a trade that works every time, you should say that's impossible. And I will say, I know. I don't want to sound like some two-bit car salesman now, but what I want to do is I want to drive this home today because to me it's spiritual. It's beyond. Thank you, Vlad. It's beyond. It's beyond trading for me. Everything that we do, I'm getting I'm getting a little choked up right here. Everything I do, I feel, I don't know if you're a religious person or if you believe in whatever you believe in. I believe in there's a spirituality to all of this that we do. The connectivity of this chat room, the idea that we're all trying to do the same thing. And I see the market going down right now, and I'm very excited. Trying to keep sane. But there's a spirituality behind the Jets, the awfulness of the New York sports, where I am in my life is where I'm supposed to be. And yeah, sure, people think I'm nuts because I like saying some outlandish stuff from time to time, but some people think that I'm nuts when I say this trade works every time. And then I say, hey, you shouldn't believe it. You have no reason to believe it. We're in the most manipulative, fraudulent industry that's ever been created in the history of mankind. And it's ripe with fraud. The reason I love what we do and how my life has morphed into what we do here with my pal on the internet, Solid Jello, and our new group of traders that we're involved in. I cannot give Steve Straza more accolades. JC, a little bit too bullish all the time for me, but very good at what he does. We're surrounded by like-minded individuals that know what they're doing, and it's nice to be around. But the most important thing right now is this trade. And if you're struggling, and I've had my struggles, I've blown my life up 3 different times and working my way through it right now. You know what happened to me last year. If I would just avoid, and again, this is where the addiction problem comes in, right? We're all human and we want to do these other things. Your cousin calls you, your friend calls you, your dad, you read something, you want to be involved. If you could stay focused legitimately on this one specific trade, when I tell you it works every day, sorry, not every day, when I tell you it works every time it shows up, that should be alarming to you. And I appreciate that. And the reason we do this live, and I say every time when we come on at 11 o'clock or whatever, you can't believe what we just did. Here it is again. So, and again, if you guys are short the cues right now, I'm rooting for you. I'm loving you. And I'm hoping that you get that sick. And by the way, this is that last target to the downside. So again, normally I would be shorting the cues alongside with you. I just was a little bit lazy. I was happy with the money, but look now what's happening. Once you broke that 4-day, look where you're headed. You should be covering some right here, my friends. So this trade that works every time, it's not this trade. This is just a confirmation bias trade. VWAP's telling you where you're going to go. The trade that works every time, right? The reason it works makes you understand it even better. Because think about the shorter, let's look at STZ for a second, okay? And you see, this is artwork to me, right? This chart and the red lines is where we traded the stock. and we did very well with it. Could have done a lot better. That's the essence of trading. You're never going to be milking the trade to the most you can get. You try to make the meat in the middle, right? So let's erase the lines. So, you guys familiar with STZ? It's not just a venereal disease. Constellation Brands, right? Everybody knows this. This is actually my mom used to own this stock. Her portfolio was STZ and Kimberly Clark. Alcohol and women's products. Actually, not a bad portfolio to build. But before we go any further, let me show you what's happening with the Qs, right? Not a coincidence that it's bouncing off a very algorithmic, specific moment, just like before when we bounced off the 4-day. Not a coincidence, right? So these are where I lose people when I do these presentations or these videos where I say, hey, we've got a pretty good idea where the stocks are going to go. We understand that the market is rigged. These moves prove the rigging, but people use that word with a negative connotation, like my uncle. My uncle is a moron. He's a pessimistic, moronic kind of guy. And we don't really talk to my uncle anymore because he's just not a good person to be around. He's a negative person and he's dumb. My uncle, for the last 50 years, since I've been born, pretty much, he's my uncle. I've been hearing the debate between my father and my uncle. My uncle says the market's rigged. Nobody makes money. Nobody can make money in the market. It's all rigged. I'm going to stay in cash and CDs. It's guaranteed. My father, on the other hand, says the market is built to go up. Pension plans and from the 1970s are funneling money into the market. And if you just buy the index over time, you basically always go up. And my uncle says, no, it's rigged. Nobody makes money. And my father says, yeah, it's rigged to go up. Just because you bought a couple of individual stocks that burnt you, that doesn't exemplify the market, right? So the rigging since 1987, if you believe in the conspiracy theories I believe, the reason the market crashed in 1987 was the first implementation of algorithmic trading. And it went haywire. By the way, if you covered down there and went long, you're a professional trader now. Trading around VWAP is the only way to trade, my friends. Look at this move. These are not coincidences, friends. These are not coincidences. We have the rigging of the market. And the way I like doing analogies because it helps you think better. VWAP gives you an advantage in the casino that we work in, right? So let's say you walk into the casino and a guy, the pit boss is a Grateful Dead fan. Hey, you with the hat, come here for a second. Me? Yeah, you, come here. Well, for the next 20 minutes on the roulette table right here, only 14 and 36 are going to hit. What do I do? Bet 14 and 36, you moron. That's what VWAP is. It's giving you a heads up of what's going to happen. And you actually now have an edge and an advantage over everybody else that's not using it. Because the market, let's bring it back to 87. In 1987, the market started using algorithms. And they programmed it. And it went nuts and broke the market. That's why we crashed. And they fixed it. And then we had the internet boom. And then the programmers of the algorithms realized, hey, you know what would work better? Is if we change the fractions to decimalization. They didn't want to tell the public that it was because they were going to get an unfair advantage and create high frequency trading and algorithmic trading. They boxed it as, here, now you could buy Microsoft at $38.03 instead of $38.12.5, which was an eighth of a point. Sure, that's why they did it. No. They did it because it's easier to program the algorithms with decimalization, 0001. So if you notice the flash crash, what was that? More algorithms breaking as they were implementing it. Another little flash crash about a year later, more algorithms. So since 2012, when I was bestowed the wisdom of using VWAP exclusively, I started to just experiment with which trades work best. And obviously, more volume, more better. So when do you have more volume? Stocks that are in the news. What's the biggest news that can happen on a stock? Either they're getting taken over or earnings. So we trade around earnings because the trade works better on earnings reports because there's more volume and we understand that the market is rigged. And now we brought it all together. So we've got something that works, right? To the analogy back to the Jets, the Jets are always going to suck, so you stick with the trend. Jets always lose, bet against them. So if you see a trade that works every time, why not continue to take the trade? So let's go look at that STZ for a second, right? STZ. So we walked in this morning. Zoop. When we walked in this morning, we saw two companies that reported earnings: Constellation Brands and AEHR, right? By the way, if you are short the Qs right now, wait. Oh, let me show you what you're going to do now. If you guys are still short, oh man, I hope you are. All right. So now you see how you went through the 4 and the 5? The 4 is now hard stop. Because usually at 5 days worth of VWAP, the market starts to put up a fight. If it doesn't, and now UVXY is up 2.5%, that is confirming the sell-off now. So now it's getting to be where you can start dreaming that we're going to go not just past the 5. Now what we've learned is we look at 10 days worth of data. Oh, shit. But you see what's in between the 10-day is this little double bottom from the other day. It's almost a triple bottom. Also, if you take now, it's all coming together right now. This is actually amazing. That was an anomaly print that day. These were anomaly prints. That's where we're probably going, because the other day the market tried to, it slipped us that little, hey, we might be wanting to go down here. So stick around. Now, if you break, this is what is a triple bottom anomaly print with the 10-day VWAP right there. You got to start thinking that's where we're about to go to, which if this is we're down less than 1% right now. So if this is going to be a real sell-off, your next target now that you're below the 5-day is 10 days. And now here's the fun part. Nobody's delusional enough to think we're actually going to keep going down, right? You always got to remember that. If it's a shorter, don't forget rule number 1 of shorting. Shorting is short-lived, and you're going to die. So how do you prevent yourself from getting run over? Right there. That 4-day pivot where you held rallied, broke down, pivoted. That is now the end of your trade. Do not let the Qs go back above 604.84 at any time today without covering what you got left. But the market, and UVXY is now confirming the sell-off. It's big. UVXY trending higher while the market's selling off is an indication of more selling to come. But always stay focused that at some point, there's always a turn. And again, this is exactly the move that I was talking about yesterday. If the gap is sold off and we roll over, we're going to be shorting. And again, I'm done with most of my 95% of my short is over because I got to the 4-day. I was very happy. But UVXY doing what it's doing right now, super important. Okay. So let's go back to that STZ. I'm a little distracted by the Qs, but everybody knows what they're doing here. Anybody who's short the Qs, please use extreme caution. We've got to the 5-day VWAP. It's almost like a miracle just happened. And yesterday we saw it in the futures market. We saw a downtick for the first time in a very long time, which kind of gave us a heads up that we might see some selling. And then, of course, the momentum stocks, the quantum stocks rolled over, which triggered the sell-off. And here we are. Let's go back to the trade that works every time. So the premise, right, if you're just joining us, the premise is, and it makes, this is what I love about this trade so much. Not only does it work every time, but it makes sense. So let's say you came in and you were buying STZ a couple of days ago, right? You broke the 1-month VWAP. You're like, all right, I'm loving STZ. You're in. And you were crazy enough to hold it into the earnings report, which is insane. I don't like holding stocks into the report. I like trading after the report. Sorry, I didn't mean to shut the microphone, but are you guys watching me on the YouTube? So I don't like trading stocks before the report. I trade after the fact, right? Because I trade the reversionary trade, right? So when I came in, the reason I love this trade so damn much is that it makes sense and then it gets validated. So I don't care how smart you think you are or what you think you know, as one of my mentors used to say, I don't care what you think you know. Nobody knows anything about, especially about the stock market. Nobody knows anything. It's a premise and it's an idea that still needs to be validated. So when I came in, I said, hey, look, Constellation Brands is gapped up on the earnings. We're looking to sell it. Boom. That's your idea because we are looking for what? We're looking for the guy or the person or it or they or whatever the hell you want to call yourself nowadays. You're looking for them to take profit because they bought it 5 or 6 days ago. How do they take their profits on their good trade? Sell. So if you notice, at first it was a faux show bro VWAP break to the upside. No reason to be shorting. So we didn't. But then within 9 minutes into the day, that premise or that idea that we had to short STZ was then validated and we shorted it. And then we go back to where do we think the stock is going? The price action always is to the prior day VWAP. So when you want to calculate the risk reward, you say to yourself, hey, I could short this stock here at 145.60 with a 2-point risk because you're risking, you don't want to be short if a stock breaks the high of the day. So your stops are prior high candles, which is was here and the high of the day for me. We short the stock, it rolls over, it gets down, starts to get close to the prior day VWAP. But what we do as shorters, we go through the steps. Hey, I can't believe this trade's working. I'm short at 145.62, and then it got down to 144. We covered some. And then we're thinking, hey, now that it broke 145, we think it's going to go to 142.50. Why 142.50? Because stocks that break 145 tend to move in 2.5 point increments based on algorithmic price action, based on options. If you guys remember back in the day when options first started coming out, they priced anything above $80. You 2.5 point increments, that kind of thing. So it still works to today. So even though we thought the stock could get down to 141.39, we have to take profit on the way up. Now, the way I trade is that if I cover here, I place a stop there. And then down here at 142.50, I covered some. And then I'm thinking we're going to roll over and go down. But in this case, we went right back up. So what did I have to do there? I had to eat it. And I said, I'm getting out. 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute, 4 minute, 5 minutes later, this stock told me, hey, buddy, you're right. Maybe you want to get short again. Because what did it do? It confirmed its weakness, even though the stock is still green, but the inability of it getting back over VWAP is a confirmation that the seller is still in control. So as it rolled back over, what did we do? Shorted it again. And then we inevitably got down to the orange line. Now, this isn't a full-blown reversal trade. This is just blue to orange, right? And this trade in itself is phenomenal. So if you consistently just trade around earnings reports and today's VWAP and prior day VWAP, the trade continues to work at an enormously successful rate. And by the way, that Q short, I would find it very difficult to be short anymore. I figured you were going to get 602.50 when it got to 603. And again, let me just go check one more time if you guys are still short. Yeah, I mean, I'd give it the 66 cents. Where it broke down from is kind of your stop. You've covered some on the way down. You can't lose now is the bottom line. That's how you stay viable in this business, right? So let me go through the AEHR, which AEHR was perfect because in this trade, you had everything there is to know about trading, and I'm going to leave you with this. Fake amount, shake amount, consolidation, breakout. So what's our bias? AEHR reported earnings and the stock is down. We're looking to buy. We're not buying it if it breaks VWAP and the pre-market lows, are we? Of course not. But then show, back above the shakeout area, consolidation. I was buying this whole consolidation. I didn't know it was going to work or not, but I wasn't going to sell it unless it broke down. You only do things when the market tells you to do it. So then it broke VWAP. I sold into the move. I got paid. I left a little money on the table, as I always do. But look, now it's reverted right back to VWAP. But once again, this is two trades that met the criteria of the trade that works every time. And the streak continues. My friends, hopefully I'll see you live in the room tomorrow. And we'll all be doing these trades for the rest of our lives, make money together, and then we'll all be partying in Vegas in February. I'll see you in February. I'll see you in Vegas. All right. Be careful.